Hey everybody, my name is Jon Sexton, and presently today it is April 30th of 2020. We're in the midst of the uncertainty of the coronavirus pandemic, and just thinking a little bit about what that looks like in terms of organizational challenges. I'm here with two organizational leaders. First, we've got Laura Kopp, who is the CEO of CASI, or the Center for Active Seniors in the Quad Cities, and Matt McCombs, who is the president and CEO of Vibrant Credit Union. And we're just going to spend a little time today talking about some of the challenges that you're seeing with your respective organizations, and really to kick us off, Laura, as our guest, maybe tell us a little bit about CASI, some of the services that are provided, and some of the challenges that you're seeing for the organization right now in the midst of the pandemic.
Great. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. CASI is Eastern Iowa's only comprehensive accredited senior center. So what that means is we have something for everyone along their aging journey, no matter when you come to find us. At the front end of our service model, we are a community-based activity center. So we're providing close to 8,000 activities every year for older adults. And that includes everything from Tai Chi to billiards to card clubs to support groups to knitting and crocheting. We have a little bit of something for everyone. And our goal is to provide services and supports that are enriching the aging experience, that we're promoting independence, and we are engaging folks through opportunities for socialization, health and wellness, education, and those kinds of things. We also then have supportive services when folks get to a point where they or a loved one in their family is in need of some kind of support during their aging journey. We have our advocacy program, which employs licensed social workers who go out into the community, meet with folks in their homes, and help connect them with the services and supports that they need to age successfully. So that may be doing some mediation between them and a landlord, that may be connecting them with VA benefits if they've never had access to those before, or enrolling in Medicaid, those kinds of things. And then we also have our Jane's Place adult day program. And this is Eastern Iowa's only licensed adult day program for individuals diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. So kind of like when you have children and you can't leave them at home while you're going to work because they may leave the house or they may get themselves into a dangerous situation at home while they're not being supervised. The same is true for our adult loved ones that are suffering with this disease. And so we provide an opportunity really for respite for the caregiver, where they can bring their loved one. We will provide that supervision. It is a locked program. We provide nutritional support, so meals, we provide fun activities, and we can monitor medications and those kinds of things. So we're a little bit, like I said, comprehensive in the way that we approach the aging process, because we want a little bit of something for everybody along that journey. So we're unique in that the folks that we're serving and the population that we're serving are over multiple decades. So we could have folks that are 50 and we could have folks that are 100. So there really is something for everyone across that array.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for that introduction there to the organization and some of the services that you provide. Really some key things there for the community, and thinking about the way that's benefiting it across the board, and also supporting folks who may have aging parents, aging family members, and what that's looking like in the big picture. Really some essential stuff there. Shifting a little bit, still within that context of just for both of you, right? We're in the midst of something no one could have predicted, and something that I don't think anybody would want to have to experience in their lifetime, but it's a reality of what we're navigating right now. We're several weeks in, and we don't know what that looks like in the future. Nobody can predict that. We know that it will continue to change and evolve. But that said, as organizational leaders, Laura and Matt, for each of you, maybe just talk about some of the challenges that you're seeing right now, whether it's for clients or members or for your employee bases, what that's looking like, and kind of how you're navigating that either individually or with your respective leadership teams.
Matt, you wanna take that one?
Yeah. Well, first off, Laura, welcome. I'm glad that we were able to set this up and have the conversation. Certainly, it's been great to be a partner with CASI in the past in some of your programs. And unfortunately, I know we were getting ready for the St. Patty's Day race right before everything changed. And so it's great that we at least have this partnership and relationship that we're able to talk through, and welcome to and thank you for participating in this with us. So Jon, the challenge, and I know Laura and I had talked about this a little before, the challenge that I think that we look at right now is there is no roadmap for success going forward for what you do with your members, what you do in your communities, what you do with your employees. There is no, there's no past history we can look at and give us a prediction for where to go. And so as we manage through, I think the comment that I'd heard from Laura earlier that I really resonated with me was just how do you do the next right thing, the next best thing going forward. And as we look at the challenges that our members are going through, unemployment now has jumped from living in the last 3 years of all-time record low unemployment to 30 million folks being unemployed in a very short period of time within about a month and a half. You've got uncertainty that's out there. So members not knowing, am I going to see my paycheck coming today or next month, or what does that look for me? What's the recovery look like? Individuals really questioning, how long are we going to be in this normal, and what does the new normal look like when we come out? And so I think just being open in communication, it's the one area where I think with both all three, our members, our communities, and our employees, we've just tried to be as open and transparent on communication as possible. And what we know with that is what we might communicate today could look different a week from now or a month from now, but we're going to just continue to be upfront with this is the information we know as of now. And so for 6 weeks, it's really the environment we've lived in both the internal messaging for our employees as well as the external for our members in the community is this is what we know now, this is what we're planning, and we're going to communicate that as we move forward.
Absolutely. Laura, maybe you can give a little voice to some of the disruption that you're seeing as well for your organization.
Absolutely. So as Matt had mentioned, for the first time in 38 years, we were forced to cancel our agency's largest single fundraiser, the annual St. Patrick's Day race in downtown Davenport. We, along with the St. Patrick's Day parade, the St. Patrick's Society, were the very first ones to really cancel a large community event out of concern for COVID-19 and community spread. And we were doing this kind of in the dark. We knew that there was an issue. We knew that we were responsible to some degree for our community's wellness, providing these large activities. But at that time, which it seems like it was forever ago, but it was just a little over a month ago, right? The health departments were really not providing much guidance for large group activities. And so we kind of made those decisions together. We were, our staff at CASI were in conversation with the St. Pat Society, and we said, if one cancels, the other is going to cancel, because we really do together create an entire day's worth of activities. And we felt responsible to each other for that. So that was the first impact. That event brings in close to $100,000 every year that is 100% reinvested back into our mission of serving older adults at the center. And so that was the very first impact I think that we saw, that we struggled with. And then 5 days later, Governor Reynolds decided to force close, and rightfully so, senior centers and adult day programs. And it makes a lot of sense. We know that we need to limit exposure to large group activities, which is really at the forefront what CASI's mission is, right? I mean, we serve vulnerable older adults over the age of 65, and we do that primarily in group activities. So at that point, though, close to 90% of our activities and coinciding revenue were suspended indefinitely. And Matt and I talked about this a little bit before. We've been in the community for close to 50 years, but like most not-for-profits, we operate on a very thin margin. And so I don't know many that are prepared to go 6, 8, 12 weeks without operating revenue coming in to support that mission. We're just not structured that way. Some maybe are. Most of us operate on a pretty thin margin. And so for us, that was the biggest challenge, is we were serving a vulnerable population before COVID, And with the advent of COVID in our community, that population is the most vulnerable population. And so we still have an obligation to provide those services. We just no longer have the revenue coming in to support the organizational function. So that's kind of been our biggest challenge. Like Matt said, we're just trying to do the next right thing every day. So
yeah, you talk about excuse me, you talk about that the funding and the disruption to the funding, which also disrupts programs. And to your point, right, there's programs that in the vast majority are just, you can't facilitate them right now. So you've got disruption there, you've got disruption on funding. This could be for both of you, but obviously all of the changes that we're navigating right now influence and impact our respective workforces. As leads of your organizations, and maybe Laura, you kick off, but how are you seeing that impact your team? And what strategies are you using to do your utmost to support them and to kind of navigate this as best you can?
Right. So we have a large population of our team that, sadly, don't make really high wages. They're entry-level positions. They are professionally trained staff. But they are not making your six figures. We have several single moms. We have folks that are the sole breadwinners for their families. So they're terrified, right? When you think about, you work for an organization that operates on a thin margin, and I'm sure in your mind, you're thinking the agency can't possibly pay me for not doing work for very long. So our team was very scared. So, as Matt mentioned, communication was key throughout. I was communicating with our team every step of the way, letting them know what we were doing and what we were looking into. CASI was able to pay full staff wages for a couple of pay periods after we were forced to close, because we did have some revenue that was coming in through a couple of grants to support our advocacy program. And then because of our relationship with Vibrant, when the CARES package came out, we were able to access those dollars. So, really communicating with our staff and letting them know that they were the first priority on our list was to keep them employed and keep them, and their families really safe and secure to the greatest extent that we could. And we started looking at really creative and innovative ways that we could do that, right? So we were able to maintain our advocacy funding because our social workers are still going out and doing the job, right? We were able to communicate with a couple of our funders and asked, okay, so can we, for a one-time shot, reallocate maybe some of our dollars that were going to Jane's Place? Because we can't provide that program. It's a group program, it's a locked program, we can't provide that. Can we shift that funding on a one-time basis over to our advocacy program? And then our plan was to shift all of our Jane's Place staff to the advocacy program, where they could help do maybe some initial intake kind of questionnaires, do some risk assessments, and really help our advocates as they were seeing more and more referrals and more clients that were coming in and coming onto their caseload. So we were trying our best to really just navigate an unknown situation. And, our team really rose to the challenge. Their goal was to help as many older adults as they can. Right. And that's why we're all doing what we do for what we're paid to do. As I mentioned, we don't have the ability to pay really large salaries to these folks that are doing the hardest of the work out there. And so our team's just been amazing. I work with a great group of folks that are really just charged by our mission. That's really what they want to do.
Absolutely. You hint a little bit at the Paycheck Protection Program and some of the things that you're seeing there. I turn on the nightly news and you see a couple of things about the program. Number one, clearly that stimulus is designed to support organizations to keep folks employed. In the same vein, as of today, right, the highest unemployment rate that we've seen since the Great Depression in a very compact period of time. So absolutely massive disruption to U.S. society, to our daily experience, what that looks like, and the uncertainty for organizations and for individual employees and what that looks like. That said, the other piece that you see a lot on the news right now is when they're covering the PPP program and how that's impacting just different employers. There's a lot of news about how the program is working and how it's how there's been some challenges there. That said, Laura, you've given a little bit of voice to the individual lens. Matt, maybe talk a little bit about the PPP program and the impact that you've seen it have, and maybe even some of the challenges that you've seen in starting to get the ball rolling on getting funds available for folks.
Yeah, so when we think about the CARES Act or the PPP program specifically out of the CARES Act, obviously in a very short period of time, our national government was able to come up with a program to try and really keep communities afloat when you go from record low unemployment to over 30 million unemployed in a short period of time. And it's really geared for organizations like CASI, where they still have a mission. They still have the ability and the need to serve their clients, but the revenue that's coming in, the program revenue that would be there normally, not existing. And so how do you balance that? How do you manage through? And when that program came out, anytime, and there's a lot of criticism that goes towards our national government agencies, and although sometimes there might be some things that are fair in that, the challenge that we face overall, though, is in under 2 weeks they were really tasked with how do we have $350 billion get out to our communities nationwide. And when I look at that, we saw significant challenges in their administration process. And again, it's not a fault to them. It's really just the speed at which we were trying to get this through. And as lenders, we didn't know, well, how do we access? What do we need to do to get money into our communities? And so we worked, we actually went through some of the national agencies that were out there. We worked a lot of our connections that we had to get into the SBA the right way, making sure that we could quickly provide funds that were there. And if I look at that first round of the PPP, Vibrant was able to end up distribute about $111 million into our communities that we serve. And I think the part about that is those dollars are community dollars. That's what allows the Quad Cities to continue to function. It's what allows the markets that we serve outside of the Quad Cities to continue to go through. I look at the work that Laura and our team is doing, and the need for our most vulnerable citizens in their community to be served. That's our role in that, is we're just a facilitator. We're there to say, how do we get that out as quick as we can? And so, the second round got a little bit easier as far as some navigation. At least they had another few weeks underneath their belt, but we still see the same challenges. If you watch the news, it'll tell you the way that the system is operating. You basically ask the SBA to fund 15 years worth of their normal volume in about a 2-week time or a month time. And so how we had to navigate that, we actually had teams working through the night. So we had teams coming in at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, working till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then another shift coming in at 3 in the morning, just to be able to work through the speed of the system, so we could help through that process. What I'm proud about is in a matter of less than a month, we've been able to fund $150 million into our communities. And you think about that, that's wages. That's $150 million of individual wages to allow companies to keep providing services. That's the role that I think community financial institutions play. We forget about that sometimes into what we do. And it's not that a crisis forces you back into that moment, but we think as a community financial institution, how important our role is as just a facilitator of funds to allow the things that we take for granted. And on a normal basis, I don't think we think about how do we serve our active seniors in our communities. Well, in moments like this, when funding changes, we have to really take a step back to look at what are we doing to help provide that? How do we as a financial partner help in that process? And we're just a facilitator. And I think watching and hearing, Laura, what you and your team continues to do in this moment to provide those services, I mean, that's the amazing part. That's the thing that I think drives our community forward.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Really, the context for that question is we see those things at the national level, and you don't always hear the context of what is happening at more of a granular level, at the community level. What does the impact look like from that perspective? because it's not one snapshot nationwide. There's all kinds of things happening in different markets and different communities, and just important to think about from that perspective. There may be some other things that we want to discuss, but Laura, one thing that you've mentioned is nonprofits. If you've ever worked for a nonprofit, or if you know anything about nonprofits, grants are very important. Contributions are very important. And so if folks are watching this and they feel moved to give, or they feel moved to support, what are some avenues that they might be able to go through to provide financial support to CASI?
We have the Birdies for Charity, for example, opportunity that is going on right now. We are so grateful to the John Deere Classic and the foundation, the Birdies Foundation. That's a great way for folks to support us. But those funds won't be available until October. So it's kind of a mixed bag, if you will, because contributions made through the Birdies program are eligible then for a match from the Birdies Foundation. So it's a great vehicle for not-for-profits to raise funds and then just get a little bit extra that they can reinvest back into their mission. But folks can always just make a personal donation. They can do that online at our website at www.casiseniors.org, or they can send it directly through the mail if that's how they choose to do it. We are located at 1035 West Kimberly Road in Davenport. And then, of course, look for opportunities. We hope to be able to put on a lot of our really fun fundraisers over the next couple of months as the restrictions on social distancing continue to diminish a little bit. So, yeah, I think any way that they can support us, we would love that. So.
Hey, Laura, one of the questions that I have through is, as a community leader and as a community leader of a nonprofit, I know that a lot of the communities that we serve have other folks that lead nonprofits that are probably dealing with some of the same struggles that you are in here of how do they manage through that process. Can you tell me a little bit about how have you worked with your board, and what's the process been of trying to figure out what do we do for the next, if this continues for another month or 2 months, what's our plan and what are we looking? Walk me through how your approach with your board and with the clients that you serve has been out there.
Sure. Well, I wish I had some great answers, right? I think this has certainly been a crucible moment in my own personal leadership journey. It's nothing that you ever learn about in school or any of the conferences and trainings that you go to. How are you going to deal with a national pandemic or a global pandemic that shuts down your business for 2 months? And so I've really leaned on my board. I have tremendous, wonderful community leaders that serve on my board who have been mentors to me for several years. And they reach out to me regularly. I think it's communication. I think it's admitting when you don't have the answers and you're not sure where to go. And I think it is being upfront and honest with some of the fears that you might have about where you need to lead the organization, and being open to ideas that they may have. But our board has been exceptional in their partnership with me in leading the organization. They really have kind of entrusted in me that the ability to make those decisions that we're going to have to make. For example, the PPP program. If I had to have waited to get either, board approval or get that pushed through as some kind of, authorized move, I think we would have lost out on a key opportunity. So it's a balance between, really checking in with my board and utilizing them as a support, but also recognizing that they give me the autonomy and trust in my leadership and my decision-making skills to be able to make decisions in that moment that are going to be best for our organization. What we've really seen is you have to be in tune with what's going on in your community from a funding standpoint, because these funding opportunities are rolling out really quickly. And a lot of our philanthropic charitable organizations are pulling together. And so, going out to the individual philanthropic organizations may not be the most fruitful when they're all coming together, for example, under the Disaster Recovery Fund. those kinds of things. And so it's just been a real joy to work with my board. Maybe joy would be an overstatement, because, obviously this has been really challenging for all of us. But knowing that I have a board that trusts me, but knowing that I have a board that would be able to support me if we felt like we were, really just stuck, I think that's been really great.
The only other thing the big question I probably have is, Jon, you mentioned kind of the nightly news. We have a tendency, I think, to get hung up in society around the negatives that are out there. Laura, could you maybe just give us a story of a little inspiration or hope, or things that you can say that as we've been in this moment where we're full of fear, we're full of unknowns, where maybe one of your employees, just to highlight a story of something that you could say over the last month that comes to mind, and you think of what CASI's impact has been on our community in the middle of this?
Sure. I think actually I probably have two different stories. So one being, we received a call in the midst of all of this about an older adult, an older woman. By happenstance, a telemarketer had reached out to her to sell her some kind of service or product. And she had mentioned to them that she doesn't have any money to purchase what they were selling. And in fact, she hadn't eaten in 5 days, that she and 4 of her adult children were living on her Social Security check, which had run out long ago, and that they were all living on coffee. And so we received a call from a community partner, and they made a referral immediately to our senior advocacy program. And our advocates were able to get out there right away and connect with her, get her food that day, get them connected with resources. But I think it's stories like that. And it kind of terrifies me, because this woman was only identified as being on the verge of starving to death because a telemarketer had reached out to her. But because our community members knew where to go, and because our advocates were prepared for that, we were able to wrap them up in services and make sure that that wasn't the case going forward. And then, Matt, I think really a testament to you and your team at Vibrant. When I, as an individual leader and personally, when I think about the bright spots, you in cases of emergency and situations like this, you look for the helpers, right? Look for the helpers, because that's where the positive energy is going to be. I really think of you and your team at Vibrant. The PPP program, we know, was not an easy process for you guys to navigate. You never let on to that for us, and so we were emboldened. We felt confident that together through our partnership, CASI was going to be able to survive. And we would not have been able to do that without the CARES Act and without those dollars. And from start to finish, that was 8 days. If that had taken any longer, we would have had to let people go. We would have had seniors that did not receive those services. And as we've seen through that call, we would have had seniors that were really facing life and death situations, and because of you and your team, we're able to meet that need, and we're able to continue doing that and be an emergency response for older adults in our community for much, much longer. So when I, as a leader, think about the bright spots and maybe some positive stories, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that you and your team are a huge part of our success here. So a very deep, heartfelt thank you to you and your team.
Thank you, Laura. The part that I look at is I believe our role as a facilitator of that. I think my biggest concern as a leader in our community going forward is, what does this change going in the future for us? I think of us as Midwesterners always talking about how we are with interactions with one another, and I'm scared of what that does what this does to change that going forward. And so those moments of hope, those moments that I think we find where we still see the humanity of how we reach out regardless of the situation around us, are the things that encourage me, moving forward. And as I said, I think Vibrant's role in it is really to make sure that we're helping enable those organizations that are making impact every single day, to continue to make those, so that the recovery isn't just a financial recovery, it's an emotional recovery, and we need to recover as we move forward. And so I thank you for all the things that you do in our community, all the things that CASI has done for 50 years and will continue to do for the next 50.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. I appreciate it. And, you bring up a great point, Matt, in that, a big part of our challenge with CASI is, we have a 40,000 square foot facility that we're trying to keep open with very little revenue coming in. But it's not just about providing those services right now in this moment. It's a great deal about that, but it's about being prepared for when we start reopening our economy and reopening our community, right? We need to be in a position where we have the staff to do that. We have the facility to do that. And it's not just going to be a light switch, right? It's going to kind of be a marathon. Excuse me. So I think, for us, we're just so grateful to have partners who understand what we're trying to do and understand the importance of providing those services and know that this is not going to be a sprint. It's going to be a marathon, and we're in it for the long haul. So.
Well, thank you, Laura. I appreciate your time today. I certainly appreciate the trust that you've put in with Vibrant as an organization, and we'll continue to do all we can to help support you and CASI as we move forward. And more than anything, thank you for your team and what they're doing to continue to provide services at this challenging time in our community.
Thank you. Thank you. We look forward to working with you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks so much to both of you for taking the time to share a little bit. Just reiterating, we're all facing a lot of challenge. There's a lot of frustration, but there's also a lot of powerful stories, and we'll continue to look for those and shed light on them, and continue to look to the hopefully very near future where we can start to get back to some semblance of normal and some glimpse at just being able to function at normal speed and being able to support our respective communities and the folks that we're working with. So again, Laura, Matt, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.